This is the Rebel Call channel. Welcome to today's show. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the red heifers over in Israel. This is a story I touched on back when it was first announced that these red heifers were transferring from Texas and going over to Israel. Well, now the story is picking up a lot more steam, and that's because we even have the altar assembled for the sacrificing of the red heifers. And I want to cover this story so people out there have an understanding of what needs to happen, what this means for all of us, what this means for humanity, and of course, what this means for the Antichrist. So let's start with the overall understanding of the verse in the Bible that talks about the sacrificing of the red heifers. In the book of Numbers, chapter 19, verse 1 through 3. Now the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, "This is the statute of the law that the Lord has commanded. Tell the people of Israel to bring you a red heifer without defect, in which there is no blemish, and on which a yoke has never come. And you shall give it to Eleazar the priest, and it shall be taken outside the camp and slaughtered before him." The sacrificing of the red heifer coincides with the building of the third temple, which coincides, of course, with the preparing of the Jewish Messiah. Now, this is where people need to understand, especially Christians. The Jewish Messiah is the Antichrist. It should be very simple for people to understand. Christians who are watching this stuff go down need to understand that the Messiah that the Jews are going to worship is the Antichrist. Our Messiah is the King of Kings, Jesus Christ. Theirs is a counterfeit Jesus. So no Christian should be supporting any of this stuff. But of course, they're having a tough time interpreting Israel, the land, versus Israel, the people. So what else is important to note with this story is twofold. Number one is that they've actually said that they found a priest or a Cohen who will be the one to sacrifice the actual red heifer. This is very, very important. Now, for those of you that don't know who Maimonides is a rabbi who was revered amongst the Jews, and he felt, and a lot of his teachings they still follow to this day, and a lot of his thinking they still follow to this day. And he believed, Rabbi Maimonides taught that the 10th red heifer would be sacrificed by the Messiah himself. That's interesting to note. Now, that doesn't mean that that's 100% truth, but this is taught amongst many of the Jewish people, that the priest who was to, or the Cohen who was to do the actual slaughtering of the red heifer would in fact be the Messiah himself. So in other words, we could view that as, well, the person who will be doing, the Cohen or the priest who will be doing the sacrifice could in fact be the Antichrist. Now, this is just theory according to Maimonides, but it's something that we all need to keep our eye on. And as I say that, now we can all look at this post from the Temple Institute. A Cohen fit to perform the red heifer ceremony. Now, of course, that doesn't look like what we'd all envision the Antichrist to look like. There's a lot of people who have a lot of theories that he's already here, who he can, in fact is, who he could potentially be. I totally understand that. I am not saying that this is the Antichrist. In fact, there couldn't maybe be a less intimidating Antichrist. I mean, I might be able to sneeze and knock this guy over, but this is the young Cohen in a photo visiting the red heifer candidates in Shiloh is fit to perform the red heifer ceremony. He came into the world via home birth, has never set foot in a hospital or cemetery, and therefore considered by Jewish law to be of the highest level of Torah purity, having never contracted tamat met, which means impurity imparted by contact with a corpse. Should he opt to participate in the Temple Institute's ongoing preparations in anticipation of the renewal of the ashes of the red heifer, he will undergo intense instruction and training. Now, we need to just keep an eye on these stories for lots of reasons, right? To keep our eyes on the signs of the times, but also do not forget that when we start hearing about a lot of this stuff in the mainstream, we need to be a little bit skeptical. Now, I understand that the sacrificing of the red heifer is probably going to be something in the coming of the Antichrist that cannot be hidden. Because, of course, that has to do with the destruction of the Dome of the Rock, which is coming, and the building of the third temple. But we are seeing it talked about even on shows like Good Morning America and in the mainstream media, talking about the needing of the Dome of the Rock to be destroyed for the building of the third temple to occur. But here's a clip I'm going to play for you from CBS Saturday morning, where they actually talk about this, and you have to listen to it and see where they're kind of going with it, right? Where the guy's saying, is this all publicity stunt with the red heifer? And we need to keep that mindset as well as to whether or not they're gaslighting people. But eventually this is something that's going to happen. And if we see the destruction of the Dome of the Rock, that's my sign. That says, okay, this is very, very near. This is about to go down. Because if the Dome of the Rock goes down, that's where they're building the third temple. So here's the clip that CBS aired a little while ago.
The cows he's talking about at a secure, undisclosed location are these red heifers, to be precise. Some Jews and Christians believe they're the key to rebuilding the historic Jewish temple in Jerusalem and to beckoning the Messiah. To understand, you have to go back nearly 2,000 years when the ancient Romans destroyed the last temple in the city. To rebuild it, these believers point to the Bible's book of Numbers. It commands the Israelites to sacrifice a red heifer without defect or blemish, and that has never been under a yoke. Only then can the temple rise again. Caring for them on an Israeli settlement in the West Bank is Yitzhak Mamo.
So we have here, after a long research, we find in Texas.
In Texas?
Texas, United States of America.
Texas Red Angus, flying them 7,000 miles to Israel.
This is not a publicity stunt.
What do you mean?
Meaning, this is something you take very seriously.
Harry Potter is a good story. The Bible is not story. The Bible is a way of God to lead us.
A massive altar already awaits, where the heifers are to be burned. According to some believers, the ceremony needs to be performed right here on the Mount of Olives, looking directly into where the temple once stood. But something else now stands in its place. The Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque, among the holiest sites in Islam. Today, only Muslims are allowed inside, but that's not stopping Jewish activists outside.
Once you got, you started here.
6 days a week, Melissa Jane Kronfeld leads groups from around the world who defiantly pray, as close as armed guards permit.
It's not about the destruction of Islamic holy sites. It is about preserving this place and being guardians over the house of God for all people.
So you're happy with it where it is?
No, it's going to go 100%, but I believe
it's going to go.
It's 100%, yeah. The whole thing is going to go. We have to build a temple.
When you say that Dome of the Rock has to go, MJ, it's hard for me to imagine something more incendiary.
Well, let me ask you something. The Middle East seems pretty destabilized right now, and the war, if I'm not mistaken, is already here.
You gotta love the woman there. So yeah, it's gotta go, right? No, it's a non-issue. It's a non-thought. It's gotta go. Well, of course we know that it's eventually going because this is biblical. But saying it as if it's just nothing to blow up all the land over there and build the third temple. Now, again, they're talking about the story as far as, look, the altar is in place. They're finding the Cohen or the priest who's going to perform the actual sacrifice. And we need to keep an eye on the story as far as who this person specifically is. Is it going to be this person that they showed us, this little, this little 75-pound guy who supposedly will be the one chosen? And then we need to remember the story, at least the theory from Rabbi Maimonides, because he is somebody who is interwebbed in a lot of Jewish law and a lot of Jewish thinking and ideologies. And his belief, again, was that the Messiah himself would be the one who does the sacrificial offering. Others believe that the Messiah will come after the temple is built, but the Messiah is already here. But one thing is for certain. The conflict that's over there is leading up to the destruction of the Dome of the Rock. I covered this months ago when this whole thing started. I think it was the day that it was announced that there was the conflict going on over there. I had said to keep an eye on the Dome of the Rock. That would be the most important thing for us to watch, would be the Dome of the Rock, because again, then we would start seeing prophecy being fulfilled. Now, there are people out there that believe that they're deliberately doing this to try to recreate and fulfill prophecy. We'll see where this story actually goes, okay? But the fact that the altar is built, the fact that there is this conflict which gives reason to destroy the Dome of the Rock, which really, without the conflict, okay, without this whole thing starting the way that it started over there back in the fall, they wouldn't be able to have a reason to destroy the Dome of the Rock. They couldn't just go over there and blow it up, because then people would turn on the Jewish people immediately and say, look, they went over there, they blew that up without reason, they're starting conflict. Remember, they always have to be victims. Excuse me, I have to be careful what I say, right? So they needed the conflict first to be able to do that. And everything else has been in place for a period of time, which shows you how this is all kind of being orchestrated, right? The heifers have been over there since before this latest conflict started back in the fall. Heifers have been waiting over there, actually, right? The altar itself being built simultaneously while the conflict is going on. And of course, now the announcing that they're searching for, and they may have found the person who can perform the ritual, who in fact could be Antichrist. And again, lots of Christians out there are not understanding that the Jewish Messiah is the Antichrist, the one that they're going to worship. I don't know what they think, right? Because we all know the Messiah is Jesus Christ, the King of Kings. He is the Messiah, the true Messiah. He was rejected by these certain group of people, right, that we're discussing here. Okay, he was rejected by the Jewish people. Those are those who claim to be but are not, but I'll say the Jewish people. Okay, he was rejected. So the Messiah that is to come is the counterfeit Messiah. It is not a real Messiah. It is a counterfeit, which thus is Antichrist. So lots of stuff to keep an eye on in regards to the red heifer, the altar itself being there, being prepared, being ready. So all that's left to be done is the destroying of the dome. Now, the other thing they've talked about, and again, this could coincide in different ways. They could do the sacrifice and then destroy the dome, probably within proximity of a very short time period, maybe within a calendar year, I don't know. But I believe that the dome has to go and the sacrifice has to be made. But it could happen in either order, I suppose, hypothetically, right? But they're talking about the actual sacrifice occurring during Passover, which would be later in April. There are people out there that believe they're actually going to do this during the solar eclipse, or in fact, that it's coming after the solar eclipse, after all these other things that I've been talking about in regards to the mass rituals that are going to be occurring, where we have NASA and CERN firing all sorts of things into thin air, supposedly, for fun, firing trillion-dollar rockets, trying to obviously open up a dimension and a portal here. So a lot of this stuff we have to keep our eye on, because spiritually, we know we're in a spiritual war. Now we need to keep an eye on the signs of the times. So just to recap, okay, the talking of the third temple is obviously something that we've all been discussing for quite a period of time. And the thing to note is that the altar is prepared, the heifers are there, the Cohen is supposedly chosen, but it does say, shall he accept, because he seems to be such a young person. And of course, we don't know if he's accepted it or not, but he's been taken to this secret location, which doesn't seem so secret, by the way. They're like, it's a secret location, yet it's on Good Morning America. Go figure, right? Wouldn't you think that this would be a target for Hummus the Food to go take out the red heifers so that they don't have their, I mean, I would think if I was them, that would probably be on my checklist of things to do, just kind of like the conflict in Ukraine with Russia. One of my, the first thing I do is be like, wait, this guy Zelensky is giving interviews for the Grammys, and he's doing interviews in 60 minutes. So now we know his location. So maybe we should just go and take care of business. That would be my mindset. Same with this conflict, which is manufactured. I'd say, well, they've got the red heifers sitting there. They're gaslighting people on Good Morning America about it. Why don't we, if we're really in a conflict, and we're not just going after civilians and causing, and producing a war like a production, why don't we go after the red heifers, right? Oh, because we can't find them. They're in a secret location, yet they're being put right on Good Morning America. And we could clearly see the guy, and we could see the location. They posted on their Facebook account, the Temple Institute, of the guy going and visiting. So you'd think they would go and target it. But of course, hey, who am I to say what would be common sense? You know what I mean? I mean, look, if I was leading an army, these are the things that I'd probably do, because the whole goal would be to win, But in this society, of course, winning is hateful, right? You don't want to win. You want to give everybody a participation award. So I guess even though they're doing this, that's that goes out of the reasoning of what's fair and what's not fair in warfare. So they probably are like, well, we want to be in conflict with Israel, but we won't go do anything to the red heifers. We'll go to the hospitals with this kid, but we won't go do anything to the red heifers because, of course, we want, we don't, we want them to destroy the Dome of the Rock, apparently, right? So we'll see where all of this stuff leads. Lots of stories out there circulating about it. Keep an eye, by the way, on a lot of the alt-right media that covers this with the red heifers, because the alt-right media, the Daily Wire, etc., it's very important to keep an eye on them and how they work their Christian audience. Specifically, as if it's a good thing that the red heifers are sacrificed, as if, if Christians really can't figure out who this Messiah is that is to come, if they can't figure out that it's the Antichrist, I'm very concerned for them. So let's snap them out of it, right? Let's kind of give them a little shake and go, hey, anybody in there, okay? Let's recap with the Messiah here. The Messiah came. We worship the Messiah. His name is Jesus Christ. They rejected the Messiah. They're waiting for their Messiah. Their Messiah is a counterfeit. Their Messiah is Antichrist. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.